Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now you may have seen my last video, which was a review of this stunning 2011 Kawasaki W800, and that video got me thinking, would I buy one of these or would I buy a Royal Enfield Interceptor 650? So hence the birth of this video. Let's find out which is the better bike. Now it's been quite some time since I rode a Royal Enfield Interceptor, I think probably over a year, and I've been eager to get back onto one because this is probably my favourite out of all of the Royal Enfields. It is exactly what I expect from a Royal Enfield. It's got that Royal Enfield feel, it's a beautiful motorcycle, and it's actually quite comfortable for someone of my height. Now at the moment, you'll be well aware if you watch the channel regularly that I have a Royal Enfield Continental GT in the garage on long-term loan, and I love that bike, but my only issue with it is the comfort. It's just not comfortable at all. The seat again is not very comfortable on the Interceptor, but the riding position is absolutely far better for someone of my height, and the riding position compared to the Kawasaki is definitely more comfortable in my opinion. The bars are higher up, you've got a bit of a rise on the bars which you don't have on the Kawasaki, and the foot position feels slightly further forward. So let me show you what I look like on both of these bikes. I am 6'1", and that's me on the Royal Enfield. Nice position, feet are in a nice position, my legs are nicely within the tank, beautiful tank. The bars are at a lovely height, really nice, so I'm not leaning over, there's no pressure on my wrist, which is a big problem with the Continental. And then on the Kawasaki, it's definitely more cramped. I feel like the bars are closer to me, they're lower down, and my feet feel slightly further back. So for someone who's tall, the Interceptor is definitely the more comfortable bike, but the seat on this Kawasaki is definitely more padded. So I definitely want to change the seat on the Interceptor for something a little bit more padded and comfortable. Again, I'd like to say a massive thank you for helping us reach 100k subscribers, but this is just the beginning. We have got no plans of going anywhere, so we want to grow this channel more and more and create better and better content. So the more of you on board, the better. So please press subscribe, it's absolutely free, and you can help us grow and grow and grow. Feed us, fatten us up like pigs. But the looks of these two motorcycles, now, I think the Royal Enfield is a beautiful bike. This particular one is really blacked out. It's a fully blacked out version. There's only a tiny little bit of chrome on this motorcycle, and I prefer the more brushed metal look. So I don't really like the matte black engine as much as the beautiful polished metal engine that they have as well. That is definitely the better looking of the two in my opinion. But this still is a beautiful bike, but this is definitely the stealth version if you like. Now the Kawasaki is quite the opposite. There is chrome absolutely everywhere, and I think this is absolutely gorgeous. It's drop dead gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful motorcycles I've ever seen. It's a true work of art, and this could be put in an art gallery, and I'll tell you what, I would argue to anyone who said that that was not art. The only downside for it having so much chrome is that you're going to do a lot of polishing. Chrome is beautiful to look at, but having owned and currently own a Harley Davidson which is covered in chrome, it's a lot of upkeep, and if you're not careful you can end up with rust and bits of pitting that don't look very attractive, and that's not going to happen with the black bike. It's going to be much easier to maintain, which is much better. It's a Royal Enfield Meteor 350. It's got quite a meaty sound. I don't know if that was a standard exhaust. But that brings me on to the exhaust on the Interceptor, which is not the standard exhaust. This has got a power range. I think it's They're using the R from rage and the end of power, so I've got confused there. Power Rage, that's quite a good name if I could learn how to speak. But it sounds fantastic. It's a really good exhaust actually. I've never heard of this exhaust before, but it delivers a lovely, deep, punchy sound which you expect from this 650, and that's how it should sound. It's not overly loud, it's not going to upset your neighbours, but it's going to put a smile on your face, because it certainly did put a smile on my face. Definitely in this occasion, because this has got an aftermarket exhaust, it's definitely the better sounding bike. But these engines are very, very different. They're both parallel twins. This is an 800 and this is a 650. Not exactly, because you know manufacturers always round things up. But they're so different, and that's mainly because this has got a 360 degree crank and this has got a 270 degree crank. So the firing order is completely different, and that gives you a totally different characteristic. This is much more vibey. At 3,000 to 4,000 RPM, you get all these vibrations. The motorcycle feels like a living creature, and you don't quite get that on the Royal Enfield. But this is a much smoother bike, but it still has the character, and definitely the character is opened up by this aftermarket exhaust. I'd like to hear a slightly louder exhaust on the W800, but it is a fabulous sounding machine, and it is smooth throughout the rev range. Now, I was just chatting to Ian from Cooper Motorcycles, who've kindly lent me both of these bikes today, and we were saying that the tyres on this Kawasaki really set it apart and give it that incredible look. They just add to the overall style of this motorcycle. The tyres on the Interceptor are definitely more designed for performance rather than aesthetic, and they do perform very fantastically. This bike in the twisty lanes is so much fun. That is where it's at home, and I'd say that about pretty much all of the Royal Enfields. They are brilliant back lane bikes. I wouldn't want to buy an Interceptor and ride it to Scotland on the motorway, but it could do it if you wanted to do it once a year, put a touring seat on it, get some bags on there. You could certainly do it, and you could do that on the Kawasaki as well. But when you get out in the back lanes, both of these bikes are very fun, but they're a different experience, a very different experience. The Royal Enfield feels a little bit more spirited. It feels like there's more at the twist of the throttle. It's a little bit more responsive. And in the corners, the suspension feels a little bit firmer. So you get a nicer sort of handling bike. You feel like you can change direction a little bit quicker on the Interceptor. And the brakes, you've got a single disc on the front and the rear, and these are Byberry brakes. And because this is a 2011 Kawasaki, brake technology has come a long way since then, and these brakes are much better, much more responsive. You can feel it straight away. As soon as you start putting the brakes in, you get some bite there. Whereas the Kawasaki's brakes were a little bit scary at first, and as I said in my review, the first corner you come to, you think, oh my god, am I going to stop? And that's just because they're a little bit spongy. They're perfectly fine once you've really pulled them in, and you've got a drum brake on the rear, so that is really old school, and it looks fantastic. In terms of pure aesthetics, that is exactly what you want on a classic or modern classic bike, because it looks beautiful, but it's not as good performance as the disc. It's not too bad actually, not much better than I thought it would be, but a disc is also much easier to maintain. If you have any issues, if you had a puncture or something like that, it's going to be much harder with the drum brake to sort it out than it would be with a bike with a disc brake. Now the Interceptor produces 47 horsepower at 7,250 RPM and 52.3 newton meters of torque at 5,150 RPM, whereas the Kawasaki produces 48 horsepower, roughly the same. I mean, it says 35 kilowatts versus 34.9, so I think this is really 47.8 horsepower or something like that. Christ, I think I just flew in my ear. And it produces that at 6,500 RPM, so slightly lower in the RPM range, and this has more torque. It has 60 newton meters of torque, and that peaks at 2,500 1000 RPM. So you get your peak torque really low down in the RPM range with this bike, which means it's really nice and torquey from the low down. So it's definitely a different characteristic. This feels like you need to be slightly higher up in the RPM range to get the best out of it, whereas this is much more of a smooth power curve throughout the RPM range. So this kind of feels like it starts to pick up much more once you get above 4.5, then it really starts to go, whereas this right from the low down pulls smoothly. But this still feels slightly more responsive, especially when you're on it. If you're in a lower gear and your revs are lower down, then this perhaps will pull slightly better because of that torque from the low down. Now this bike has a 5-speed gearbox and this has a 6-speed. Both are very nice gearboxes, no complaints there. The dials are absolutely beautiful on the Kawasaki, an absolute true work of art. It's stunning. The same could be said about the Interceptor. They are very, very nice, but not quite as beautiful. And the surround of the dial is a little bit plasticky, whereas this is plastic, but it's a gloss finish, so it looks slightly better, and from afar you may think it is metal. Overall, the quality of both bikes is superb. Both of them are very, very good quality. But I think the Kawasaki perhaps has slightly less plastic parts, whereas like this has got a plastic mudguard, this is metal. But that's nitpicking, and overall the finish is very, very close on both of these bikes. They really are well finished machines. Price wise, the Royal Enfields are £6,500 brand new in the UK. This is a 2011 bike and it's £4,500. I think when they were new and when they still produce this bike, so a newer version of this bike, they were around the same price brand new. So they are pretty close to each other, but this is obviously the older version, so it probably would be better to compare a sort of 2019-2020 model against this Interceptor. But this is the first W800 that's come up on the market anywhere near to where I live, so taking the opportunity to ride this bike was an absolute must. So we'll have to get over the fact that it's a slightly older version, unfortunately. I think if you're a new rider, the Interceptor is an excellent motorcycle because it's really easy to ride. It's got a light clutch. It's so easy to get used to. It's a good riding position. It's not too fast. It's a perfect amount of power to get used to, but also once you are an experienced rider, it's enough. You don't need more than this. This is a fantastic motorcycle. There's too many bikes these days that are going after power, more and more power, and there's only a limit to how fast you can go in the real world. So unless you're riding on track, you don't need all that power or all that performance. It's unusable. And when you're on these bumpy back lanes as well, you can't handle the bike and go really fast and get your knee down because it's so bumpy that you'll probably come off, and the suspension is too harsh for the real world. That is not an issue with a bike like these. These are bikes built for trundling along the country lanes, stopping at a beautiful pub, getting a pub lunch, having a nice drink, enjoying the sunshine, and then heading back off on your bike to enjoy those beautiful lanes, really get used to the bike, be at one with the motorcycle, smell the different things as you go past. You go past a farm, you smell the different poo, basically, but it's nice. You feel the changes in temperature, and that is something you notice on a bike like this, and you're not worried about going as fast as possible, and you're not constantly on the edge of death, because that's what happens when you ride a really fast bike all the time. You're constantly pushing yourself further. How fast can I go today? Can I reach 150 miles an hour? And this is just, it's an accident waiting to happen. At some point you're going to come off and you could have a serious accident. Riding a motorcycle like this, that's not what it's about. It's about being laid back, riding art on wheels, and just enjoying the ride. So I think I've said really everything I can possibly think of about these two bikes. I've probably missed something, and I feel like I have missed a point. and I'll probably get home and kick myself because I've missed a serious point. But I think both of these bikes are fantastic. I really like both of these machines, but I think I probably click a little bit more with the Interceptor. It's a little bit more me, and I think it suits my riding style a little bit better than the W800. But perhaps the old man would disagree. Perhaps he would prefer the W800. But I think he might struggle on this bike in terms of his height, because of the riding position being a little bit tucked away. It might not be good for him because he's a giant ape. So I know for a fact he's okay on the Interceptor because he has reviewed this bike. So we'll definitely get him on one at some point. But I think overall, which one would I choose out of these two bikes? Probably has to be the Interceptor, I think, for me, just because of that wonderful sound, the beauty of the looks, which you could say about that as well, but I just prefer the way this bike rides slightly over the W800. But that is a beautiful bike as well, so perhaps if you ask me on a different day, I might have a different outcome. But what a fabulous pair of machines. This is the kind of motorcycle that I love, because it's just so beautiful, they're full of character, and they hark back to the old school motorcycles. So if you like bikes like this, again, make sure you subscribe, and any other bikes. We are covering all kinds of bikes on this channel, and we've got loads coming up. The next video, you should see the old man back on the channel. So we'll see you in the next one.